Today is the 25th of First Adar and the 5th of March. And so we sort of ended abruptly yesterday. I know it sounded like it was the end. I was even going to write on the video that you need to listen to the second part on this.
We have two questions.
Okay.
No, so we didn't get.
We were talking about that in order to have a relationship with God, you have to have some inkling that He is like you. You can't have a relationship with something that is absolutely not like you, and that creates a real issue. So what we read here, which said, if I can find it again.
Well, that goes back to the Rambam and the Rash, but yeah.
Right, and the whole issue of paradoxes. But let me just read what he said again, and it is to. No, I don't think this is it. What is it? Here it is. Sorry. Thus it is with the anthropomorphic and anthropopathic concepts and terms. There is no concrete or direct link or likeness between them and the meanings they seek to express, meaning between our world, where we take these anthropomorphic ideas, the morphisms, and the pathos, the feelings, and how they seek to express it in godliness. But nonetheless, they are corresponding signs and symbols relating to and denoting specific categories, notions, and concepts that are of a strictly spiritual nature, non-spatial and non-temporal. And again, I said that I'm not crazy about the spiritual, but the point here wasn't that. The point was that there's no relationship. And the moment that there's no relationship in the mind, and here he even adds in the feeling, then there's no relationship at all. Yeah. How can you have a relationship? Now, if you would say, let's say that this is only about concepts like worlds and souls and other things, but not God, I would have an easier time with it. But when it comes to God Himself, you can't say this. And certainly if you can't say this about God, then it stands to reason you can't say it about any of these mystical concepts. I think the real word is mystical, not spiritual. I mean, mystical in the sense that we said there's spirit and matter in the mystical realm as well. They're just called by different names. And we said why? Because you can't relate to something that's nothing like you. There's no point in trying to relate to it. That would leave you completely godless. In terms of a relationship, there might be a God like that, and I can't say anything about Him. And because I can't say anything about Him, so what do you want from me? Why would I form a relationship with something that I cannot describe at all, that has no affinity to me, has no likeness, has nothing? And we see that it's exactly the opposite when God creates man. He says, let us create man in our form, in our likeness, our image, whatever. So the Torah says that. You could say the Torah is not literal. Okay. But you see that the Torah wants to say that because it realizes that you can't expect someone to have a relationship with something that they're nothing like. So there has to be a likeness in it. So this is the basic problem that mysticism was faced with. Jewish mysticism. And the way we left it yesterday is, well, we'll just put this in, we'll say this is not entirely true. It's true to a degree, but the next step is that still you have a problem, that if you at some level leave it as, well, does that mean that I can understand God? So that presents a problem just as much, which is why mysticism ran to this statement that he just said, which is it's nothing like it. It's like don't get carried away. It's not. So there's a short answer and a longer, not short. It's more like the first answer and the second answer. The first answer is what the Baal Shem Tov taught about this. And the Baal Shem Tov, the very first teaching that one learns from the Baal Shem Tov after you open up the cover page of Keter Shem Tov, which is a collection of his teachings. So the very first teaching is Halavai oti azvu v'torati shamaru. Would it be that they would leave me but keep my Torah? And the Baal Shem Tov This is a statement in the Talmud.
Oh, okay.
It's based on a statement in the Talmud, and it says that even before the destruction of the temple, or it's talking about the Second Temple period, if at least they would have kept my Torah, then there wouldn't have been a destruction. The fact that they left me, that they don't, that's one thing. I'm willing to forgive them for
it.
But the Torah, they're not willing to follow my Torah. That shows that okay. So the Baal Shem Tov takes this in a very interesting way. He says God's Torah is not God; it's His Torah, it's His will. So he says, even if you leave me, what does it mean to leave me? He says it means that even if you cannot create a relationship with me because something happens that suddenly they stopped having a relationship with God. It's not just that they woke up in the morning and said, okay, we've had enough of this. They had enough of this, or they felt that they couldn't communicate, they couldn't relate to God.
The Jewish
people, and the sages even.
But at that point, or from before?
At that point, at the end of the Second Temple period, because something was going on. It wasn't just that they woke up and they became terrible people. That wasn't it at all. It's just that the previous way of understanding godliness was no longer relevant for whatever reason. And this says that you have to continue constantly trying to update your understanding of how and what God is, how you're relating to Him. And even though the Torah, you take it from the Torah, it's still the basis. So you have to learn it from the Torah, but then you have to advance to better, higher interpretations of what the Torah is saying all the time. If you don't keep your hand on the pulse, then you wake up one morning and you say, this is not relevant. The pulse of time, the pulse of what's going on in the world, about how things are changing. If you don't understand that, then you don't know what to ask the Torah. You don't know what to do with the Torah. You like sort of say, okay, I'll just do what my parents did. But sometimes it becomes irrelevant what my parents did. Sure. Well, not what they did, but what they believed. What they understood. So somebody lost it then. Could be because the concepts were in transition. There's a lot of things that changed. The Second Temple, the destruction of the Second Temple is not just a religious event. It's a tremendously religious event. But it's also a geopolitical event because it was so influenced by so many things that were changing in the world at the time.
For sure.
So it comes about Shem Tov, it says like this, that you have to learn from this a principle. And the principle is like this. He says, this is a principle now for all time. I don't know if it'll change someday, but right now it's very, very relevant. It's exactly how you need to live. He says, for them to leave my Torah, for them to leave me, means I am undescribable. In their eyes, I'm undescribable. They can't fathom me. And it's true. There is truth to that. But they shouldn't leave my Torah. Why? Because my Torah gives an inkling of who I am. So we have a paradox here. Yeah. And the way the Baal Shem Tov says it is like this. There's a person who learns very well, and he learns from the philosophy of his times, and that began at the end of the Second Temple period, that God is incomprehensible. He learns that, and he understands it fully. So he says, okay, if he's incomprehensible, then it's not relevant to me. Anything you tell me is incomprehensible. It's not relevant. I don't care. And so he leaves me altogether. He may be orthodox. He may continue to keep mitzvot. He may continue to do what he's obligated to do. But he has no relationship with me. Yeah. Why? Because he heard the truth, which is really the truth. He's incomprehensible. But then he says there's another person who says, it's true that maybe it's true that he's incomprehensible, but I can't start from there. I have to start from trying to comprehend. Yes. And if I come at the end to an impasse in terms of my understanding, and I realize I've reached the limit of my understanding and I still don't understand, then he says that's entirely different than someone who gives up from the beginning who never tries. So the way this was phrased, so this is how the teaching is. So don't leave the Torah, meaning continue to try. Why? Because the Torah is how you have the relationship. Yes. That's what creates the relationship. Yes. And then in the end, you know that, but I also don't fully understand. That's how, so this is a very famous teaching, again, because it's the first one in Keter Shem Tov. It's after you turn the two cover pages that have other teachings, but they don't even look like teachings. It looks like a letter, and then it looks like a little piece of something. It doesn't. But this is the first one that you learn. So it's very famous, and for years I understood it the way I just said it now. But then I read in a book from Jikov Chassid. Jikov was a Chassidus that was in Galicia before the Second World War.
What's the name again?
Jikov, and they're Galicianer Chassidus
Yeah.
And this Jikov Chassid, he had a tremendous way of saying it. His name is I just confused him. He's not Jikov. Sorry, he's not Jikov. He was not even a Chassid. He was a German intellectual who was Orthodox, but he was German. Yeah. We're talking about 1910, 1920. Okay. At the time, he lived in Vienna. There were a lot of intellectuals in Vienna at the time. And his name is Aaron Marcus. And he, at some point, got drawn to the Radomsker Rebbe. And Radomsker was a very special Chassidus, was very intellectual, very smart. And the Radomsker had a lot of intellectuals around him. And he got caught in that, and he became Chassid because of that. And he wrote an incredible book, a number of incredible books, Aaron Marcus, and one of his books is called Kabbalah. The book is called Chasidism, and it has a chapter on Kabbalah. And there, actually 2 chapters on Kabbalah, he discusses how Chasidism sees Kabbalah. And one of his introductory remarks is like this. He says, and this is the same teaching, he's just saying it in a way that makes it dynamic so that you can understand what the Baal Shem Tov was trying to tell you. He says, the Baal Shem Tov's core is always run and return. It's like you do one thing and then you do the complete opposite. You run, meaning you go out of yourself, you return, you come back into yourself. So he says the way this works here is that first you have to use all of your perception, all of who you are, to understand God is similar to you. Okay. Whatever you have, God is at least this, so He's this. Yeah. Yeah. And then you have a picture of who you're relating to. And the moment that picture is strong enough, you have to let it go completely. You have to erase it. And he says this is how the Baal Shem Tov saw the relationship with God as a run and return.
Wow.
That if you don't form a picture, you have no relationship. If you have a picture, it becomes idolatrous. So you have to run and return all the time. So it doesn't say here how long the run can be. It could be that for a few hours, this is what I'm building.
The time is not.
And really, when do you have to let it go? When you step up to daven, when you step up to pray. When you step up to pray, you can't pray to that picture because that's having some image in your mind. Sure. So at least when you're praying 3 times a day, you have to reset the whole system. But he says if you don't have that, if you don't take the time to actually try to understand, have a picture of what God is, have some. Now we
concept,
the amazing thing,
sense, yes.
The amazing thing is we do this every time we daven. In the beginning of davening, I'm in Psukei de Zimra, in the Psalms that we read. Psalms is very much David having a relationship with God, sure. So it's completely descriptive.
Yes,
God is like this, and He's like this, and He's and everything that He does, and so on and so forth. Then you can say again, it's not how He is. It's not true. He's talking about how He is, but you could say, it's like the sages say, it's how He acts. It's not how it's, and it's true. There's a lot to be talked about. Like, what does it mean that we're describing God? We're describing His actions. Actually, we're not describing Him. And so there's this concept that even when you describe a feeling that God has, it means that He's acting in a certain way, not that He's necessarily a feeling or something like that. But those are details, not so important. You read Psalms, and then you say Shema. What is the Shema meant to do? The Shema is meant to erase the Psalms. That's really what it does. So that you can go and stand before God in Shemona Esrei, in the Yamidah. If you don't do that in the middle, if you don't have Shema in the middle, and you go to stand...
Why would Shema negate, I guess that's the word.
Right. It negates
Zimra.
Because they say Hashem is one. He's nothing like I'm closing my eyes. It's as if, everything I saw now is not relevant anymore.
Oh, wow.
Now, according to this, what is the hardest prayer to pray in the day? Mincha. Because Mincha, you say Ashrei, and Ashrei is all descriptions of God. And then straight go to Amida. So, the reason it's not so difficult is because nobody pays attention anyway to what Ashrei says. We just say it's just one psalm, so it's very quick. You don't really think about it.
Yeah.
Why we say it? Because of a Zohar that says you should say it 3 times a day, and so.
Is that I know Zohar? Yeah, okay.
But really, the reason is because it's almost impossible in the middle of the day to negate all your understanding. Because in the middle of the day, you're in the middle of everything. You couldn't negate anyway. You're so engrossed in everything you're doing.
Right.
It wouldn't work anyway. So they didn't even try. But in Ma'ariv, it's okay because first you say Shema, which means erase the remains of the day, as we would call it, and then you say the Amida. On Shabbos, we say it much more because we have time on Shabbat. So in the blessings of Shema, we have this statement: "En aroch lecha Hashem Elokeinu ba'olam hazeh, ve'en zulatcha makenu la'olam ba." En aroch lecha, there is nothing like you, God, in this world. That statement, we even sing, a lot of people sing it, Ein aroch lecha Hashem Elokeinu ba'olam hazeh. You know that.
Sure.
So a lot of people will sing it. And it's a beautiful statement. It's a four-verse statement that says anything I can think about you is irrelevant. And that you need to have that because the Sukkah de Zimra, the Psalms, is much, much longer on Shabbat. You have 5 more, 6 more, 7 more chapters.
Yeah.
And so you're much more into describing God. So you have to negate it. So this is a concept that the Baal Shem Tov didn't invent. He's just saying, or the way that Aaron Marcus is saying it, is that it's a run and return. That even in prayer you have this run and return. So that I have to grasp God in some way, but then before I stand up to the Amida, I have to let go of everything. I have to erase my mind. I have to come and say, but in the end I don't understand. And this is a famous statement that came from the Rashba. The Rashba was the great Jewish leader of the 12th century, after the Rambam, and he was just a towering figure, and he knew Kabbalah, but he wasn't very favorable. He didn't think it was, and he had a very interesting correspondence with someone in the south of France, who was a Mekubal, who was somebody who was learning Kabbalah, and he had a very and the whole correspondence, both sides of the letters appear in the Rashba's responsa. It starts in 414, it goes all the way to 421, I think. I don't remember exactly. It's very long. Each letter is very long. And one of the questions that the Rashba, Rabbi Shlomo ben Arderis, asked this Mekubal, whose name right now escapes me, is, who do you daven to in the end? You have all these descriptions of godliness, like right? They didn't have Shochet's book, so it didn't say at the end of all the and all this is to be taken. This is nothing like God. They didn't have this disclaimer at the time. So he says, "Okay, I understand. When you're learning, who do you daven to in the end? Who do you pray to?" And this Mekubal was a genius. He knew that you have to. If you really want to get someone's attention, you have to figure out how to say something. We talked about this in an idiom, in an image that becomes an idiom. And this image that he gave was so tremendous. Everybody knows it, or everybody who's learned Chasidus knows it. And it says, "I pray to whomever the baby prays to." Ani mitpalel ledat ze hatinok. I have in mind what he has in mind. What does the 3-year-old kid know? Nothing. What is he praying to? He's praying to something. He's even saying, really, that, and this is something Rosh Steindotz once told me, he was staying by some family, and at night, he walked by the little children's room, and he hears the 3-year-old and the 5-year-old talking. And the 5-year-old says to the 3-year-old, "Remind me how do you pray? Like, I don't remember. It was very strange. The older one, the 5-year-old, was asking the 3-year-old, and he says he couldn't hear the answer. And he says, but that is 100% exactly what this Mukubal meant. That little children understand this better. I mean, they can't explain it to you. Maybe they can talk about it between themselves, but they can't explain it to you. But they have a better understanding of who we pray to than an adult, because an adult is encumbered with all these pictures. Anyway, so that's the first answer. The first answer is that this is a run and return. So I have to say Psukkah. I have to fill myself with psalms, which are descriptions of God and so on, or whatever I'm learning. I have to fully understand it, and then when I stand up to pray, I have to erase it and annul it completely. Yeah. So there's a yesh and an ayin, and that's how Aaron Marcus calls it. It's a run and return between yesh, between being and non-being. And the being here is my conception of God. The non-being is that when I stand to pray before Him, there can't be anything in my mind. I'm praying to Him like the way that the 3-year-old prays to Him. So that's first. And tomorrow we'll add a second answer, which you'll see goes a little bit further than this one.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful.